Welcome, everyone. Rilus Dana here. Special show today. We're going to be talking about the Corporate Transparency Act. So we have a guest here. Let me bring her in. This is Natalia, my friend from Florida. She's an attorney and also works with a lot of real estate investors.
Yes.
So thanks for your time today. I've heard you speak about this subject a little bit, and I'm glad you have the time to come in here and enlighten us today. I guess first you want to give an intro, tell everyone about yourself and your primary practice area.
Sure. And first of all, thank you for inviting me here so I can help enlighten your audience and just make sure that they're well protected and don't make mistakes with the Corporate Transparency Act. But I am the owner of LCO Law. It is a Florida-based law firm, and we focus on asset protection, which includes estate planning, trust formation, business entities, mostly focused for real estate investors. And the other side of our practice is real estate litigation. So.
Okay. And then you've really made it a point to learn this Corporate Transparency Act. Have you,
Yes.
It seems like you've been watching this for a while, huh? You weren't just surprised in January, like a lot of people.
No, I've been tracking this for about 2 years now, from about when the act was passed, although it's been in the workings in Congress since 2006, funny enough.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it's had many iterations, many attempts of congressmen to pass it. It eventually finally passed in right around 2021. But they needed time to create regulations so that people would know what to do regarding the Corporate Transparency Act. And those regulations finally got finalized last year, which is why the act really became effective January 1st of this year. So it's the law now.
Yeah. So what is it? What is, I guess, what is the law? And then what's some of the background on it?
Yeah, sure. So the Corporate Transparency Act is, first of all, it's a federal law. It affects about 33 million businesses in the United States, and most of them small businesses. And the reason for the law is because, in the United States, we have a very easy and kind of secretive way in many states of filing and creating entities. The lack of knowledge by the government agencies of who are the actual owners behind these companies made us a very attractive ground, both within the United States and outside of the United States, for shell companies for nefarious activities, for money laundering, for human trafficking, for all sorts of criminal acts. And so, yeah, bad stuff. And back in 2006, most of the European community started passing laws that required, divulging who the owners of these companies were. And the United States realized that they needed to get their act together on this too, so that we wouldn't become so attractive for these kind of criminal activities. And that is the reasoning behind the Corporate Transparency Act. So it is a requirement to submit information on who the beneficial owners, the real individuals behind the scenes are, for LLCs, for corporations, for limited partnerships, limited liability, limited partnerships, any entity that has to register with the state to become a thing. And these submissions. Go ahead.
I'm trying to think back to 2006.
Mm-hmm.
Now, was that about the time when the Swiss leaked all those bank accounts? And was that happening around then?
Yeah, you've got that. You've got like the Panama Papers, right? It was a time when there were a significant amount of activity demonstrating that, not having the information of who the owners were of companies were resulting in significant financial crimes. And to put a stop to it, right? Like I said, European Union got their act together fairly quickly and said, no, you need to tell us who's behind the scenes owning all of this. And our congressmen have been trying, and it's been bipartisan, by the way, the approach. And it finally passed over the veto of then President Trump. And yeah, we finally have something in place to kind of address all of these shell entities. And it's not something public, okay? It requires registration with FinCEN, which is a private database through the Internal Revenue Service, so through the Department of Treasury.
Okay, so So this affects anyone with an LLC, correct? You say small business owners. There's probably a lot of people listening
Oh,
or
yeah.
watching this. They're thinking, "Oh, I'm not a business owner. You know, I have my day job." But if you invest in real estate and have an LLC, or if you have whatever side gig in a limited partnership, is that affected as well?
Yes.
Corporation?
Yes. So there are pretty much, if you are a small business, you have less than 20 employees, you have less than 5 million in gross revenues, and if you have 5 million gross revenues, you have to have a physical location in the United States. It's actually like causing the activity resulting in, in this business income. If you don't have any of those exemptions, if you're not covered by that, not at least 5 gross millions and 20 employees, then you are a covered entity and you have to register. So all these people have like part-time little LLCs, part-time limited partnerships. Those are included in the Corporate Transparency Act for having to report. And it's not every owner has to be reported. It's the ones that have 25% or more of direct or indirect control of the entity. So some managers might fall into this if they have substantial control authority over an entity. So again, not just owners.
So managers have to be reported as well?
If they have substantial control. So if their authority is grand when it comes to these entities, then yeah, they're going to have to report themselves as somebody that is a beneficial owner, just as it's defined under the regs.
Yeah, so it's been on my list to report all my entities, and I've really been dreading it. It's been on my calendar a few times, but it keeps getting moved. Like I have like someone else that will need a meeting. So I'm like, oh yeah, I'll do that later. I'll do that later. I even started doing it one time, and I got interrupted. Like it needed like the date my business was opened, and I went to find that, and then I got interrupted by another phone call, and haven't got back to it.
I would say, it once you get it done, it's fairly simple. I think the best recommendation that I could make is make sure that you, as a beneficial owner, you get your own ID. Okay, your own ID issued, because that ID.
What does that mean?
There's a two-step process, right? So first, right, is like, are you a covered entity? And if so, then you have to do a registration for each of your covered entities. Covered entities just means, you're that corporation or LLC or whatever that doesn't qualify under an exemption. And then.
And I guess the exemptions. So those first ones sounded like big exemptions.
Yes.
Like you have to have a big company, 5 million or over. What about, is there other exemptions that would apply to the company?
Yeah. So most of the other exemptions also fall under those big company things. Like you have to be a publicly registered agency or a government entity, or, you're like a political organization under 501A of the code. The other one that I would say fits more with like small business owners, maybe some real estate investors, are companies that haven't been in existence for over 12 months, but they really have to not have been in existence for longer than 12 months. And that requires the business to not have any activity in the past 12 months, no foreign owners, no funds left in any of like the company's assets that are worth over $1,000. And no other real assets. So for those real estate investors who, like, let's say had a holding company that still has a piece of real estate in it, you're not exempt. You still have to register that one, even if there's been no other activity in it. So the exemptions are not largely available. That's why so many entities are really covered by the Act.
And then another question too. So I've been saving these. I know we're gonna have this conversation, but a friend of mine, a real estate investor, he was showing how he added someone on the lease. I guess he was having trouble in some state or some HOA. They said that and it has to be an owner, so he added that person on the LLC, but just for a small percentage. And so right now it's just 25%.
It's 25, right?
Is there any talk about changing that? Do you know, or is that a consideration in the future? They might go down to.
So I haven't heard anything about changing the percentage, but you do have to be mindful of that direct or indirect control. So if that co-owner that's now part of the LLC really has a lot more control than what the sharers say, there might be
That's
some
what
cost
they do.
for reporting them. The other thing that I did see that they were thinking about covering right now, trusts are not covered entities. So, trusts are, because of their nature, they're not recorded or registered with the state in order to become activated. They
Yeah,
are
that's making me
thinking,
nervous. Yeah.
yes. So they are thinking about trust entities having to eventually report under the Corporate Transparency Act. But so far, they haven't done any changes to the law that would allow the regs to require trust to be a covered agent that has to file. So for now, again, like if you've got land trusts or other kind of private agreements that don't require being formed under state law, because like certain business trusts do require registration with the state in order to be an entity. So a business trust is something that has to already file under the CTA. What I did want to add is those timelines. You were saying that you're kind of pushing it off and you're pushing it off. So if your business was created before January 1st of this year, you've got the entire year this year to do the filing. Okay. If your business was created after January 1st of this year and within this year, you've got 90 days. The regs used to say 30 days, but they just updated and embraced the change at the end of December that extended it to 90 days. So people are coming up on it if they created the entity right at the beginning of January, and then if you have an entity that you create after January 1st or commencing January 1st of 2025, then you only have 30 days to do the update registration with FinCEN. So timelines are important of when your entity was created. And then, of course, attorneys, CPAs, we get impacted by whether you're filing on behalf of clients now. If you file after January 1st on behalf of clients, you have to report yourself as an applicant. And this has certainly changed my practice because I no longer do the filings for clients. I don't want to have to report myself as an applicant for an endless number of entities. But just be mindful of that, as a professional.
Yeah, let's talk about that. That's the other thing I want to talk about too. So when I started learning about this, I was like, oh crap, I may not want to do LLCs anymore. It just may not be worth it. Here's my thoughts. Is it going to go one way or the other? Either one way it's going to go where it could be good for us eventually is it may shut down all the little shops doing LLCs. The days of a really cheap LLC, there may be less people doing those because of the extra reporting and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as attorneys, if we do them, we're going to be charging more, right? It just comes down to it. There's more involved, and there's just liability. If you got to put your name on there, then it's extra for extra time and liability. In our world, that means more money, right?
And it's not just so here's the reason why it's substantially going to change the pricing involved, no matter who does it, whether it's an entity like the registered agent companies or attorneys. Every time there's a change, that has to be an updated submission to FinCEN. So if there's a change of address, if there's a change of, owners, let's say a co-owner of the entity passes away, that needs to be an updated change. If you as an applicant, right, as an attorney created the entity and your business address changes, you need to update that with FinCEN. So all sorts of changes that are required within 30 days. So changes don't have this broad time period. It's 30 days. Within 30 days of that change, every time there's a change, you have to update it. So think about how much more work this is being added onto company applicants like attorneys or CPAs or these companies doing these kind of entity formations. And I think that's gonna really trigger a change in the cost of administering these as well, particularly as corporate counsel, if you were an applicant on behalf of a client.
Yeah. And then I guess I need to go in there and do it, but how hard is it? What I hate about it, I just hate that it's an extra reporting thing like we're talking about. And it's just one more thing to think about every time you're changing an LLC or any business entity now. This also goes kind of in parallel with that, right? Whenever you do something on that, you're going to have to go in this other place as well.
So I would say it's Less complicated if you follow the steps that I recommended, which is first getting your ID, your individualized beneficial owner information ID. And then you can use that number to
So what
skip
sort of,
a substantial step of the filing per entity.
so I can go in myself, Rilus Dana.
Mm-hmm.
And where do I go? Is it FinCEN.com or FinCEN.org?
So it is FinCEN .gov/BOI. That's BOI stands for beneficial owner information.
Okay.
And then, so where it says create a FinCEN ID, that is where I would recommend people start, because that is so much easier to then have that ID and use that ID for all the entities that you're going to report. Because if we know something is entrepreneurs don't just have one business,
Right. I know.
they have many. So that will help save a substantial amount of time. And once you've done it once with your, beneficial owner ID, doing the report for the other entities takes maybe 5 minutes per entity.
You just need the date when it was created. Do you need the tax ID number for each one?
You do need the EIN information for the entities, yes.
Yeah.
Which can be a difficult challenge for those people that, again, never sought out a tax ID, right? They're just like, oh, I'll create an LLC and I'll put this property in it and not do anything else. Now you need that for the submission purposes.
Ooh, good point. I didn't think of that. So there's probably a lot of people out there with bad entities that are going to be realizing it as they try to register.
Yeah. And I think that's why they made it a year, to get this thing going so they actually do it correctly, is, make sure that you get that EIN number so that it can be reported. Because again, unless your company hasn't been in existence for longer than 12 months and doesn't have any assets and just really is something that like you created maybe in 2018 and never did anything with, you're going to have to report on it to FinCEN.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So get the ID and then do your entities. Was there a third step?
No, just make sure that you save those records and, send little reminders to yourself that if there's any update to your address, to the entity address, to the numbers in your IDs, because that counts as well. So for example, here in the state of Florida, if somebody gets a DUI, that actually changes the number on their driver's license. And that is a sufficient change to have to update with FinCEN. So if your passport number changes, if your ID number changes, if your name changes because you got married, like those things happen, you need to then do an update with FinCEN. So maybe having a little list as a business owner right in front of you that says like, have any of these changes this year? If so, we need to update within 30 days as a general practice.
Yeah, so that could be another risk for business owners. Someone with an LLC thinks they're in good standing.
Yep.
Gets something goes bad, and then it's, oh, you didn't do your FinCEN properly,
right? And the penalties are quite hefty. It's $500 a day for violations, and that could be up to $10,000 in fines. And in addition to that, right, if they find that the violations are willful, then at that point you can have up to 2 years in prison. So
wow,
not something to laugh about or to ignore.
Yeah. So thanks for your time today. I appreciate your coming. Yeah. I wanted to educate my audience about this, since there's a lot of them that have LLCs and different entities that don't consider themselves entrepreneurs or even small business owners, but technically they do own a small business. So
That's right. No, it's been my pleasure.
Thank you. How can people find you?
So an easy way to find us if you ever need legal assistance in the state of Florida is www.lcolawfl.com. So that's like Legacy Community Opportunity. That's what the LCO stands for, lawfl.com.
Thank you. And then how about, do you have a YouTube channel or social media?
Yes. So YouTube channel, if you type into your YouTube URL, LCO Law LLC, you are going to get that information. And I am absolutely terrible about remembering what our little @ thing is. I think it's at LCO Law -wealth. But yes, our channel has tons of videos. I also have an expanded thing on the Corporate Transparency Act. and some of FinCEN's other regulatory things regarding sales transactions, real estate transactions here in the state of Florida that now are getting looked at.
That's what I've learned about it. So go check out our YouTube channel if you have more questions about FinCEN. I know you've gone deeper over there in other podcasts and other things that I've seen. So if you have further questions, the answers might be there on our YouTube channel. So thank you so much today, and we'll see you soon. I'm in Sedona. We're on a company retreat, so we got to go to a pink Jeep tour.
That's awesome, Rilus. I love it.
My team trusts me. So now it's a different level. They're trusting me today. We're going to go on an outdoor adventure.
That sounds fantastic. Wear sunscreen.
Yeah, it's cold here today for us. Well, Florida, you're pretty warm too. So it's we're freezing. It's like 57 and So.
But the weather hasn't been. You're not experiencing any of that storm that like went over the Sierra Nevada region or anything like that.
No. I hear they're getting slammed over there. Tons of snow. So.
Yep.
Well, thank you very much. We'll see you soon. And thanks everyone for tuning in live or on the future. Leave a comment on there, and we'll try to get back to them. So,
All right. Thank you.